The nation has debated many issues over the past year since President Trump took office. One of them has been federal funding for public broadcasting. That funding was eliminated as part of a budget recession bill that also cut foreign aid spending. For many people in Maine, the threat to funding for public radio and TV has been a major worry. So 207's Don Kerrigan talked with the president of Maine Public about that. Hi, Don.
Hi, Sam. Full disclosure, I worked for public broadcasting 20-some years and several different presidents ago. And the current president of Maine Public says that the cuts at the federal level actually ended up taking money away from local stations. But he says so far, the network and its audience have been weathering that storm. It may be music.
You are listening to Maine Public Classical, and I'm your midday host, Emily Duncan Wilson. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Asking people for their papers on the street.
Or news and talk.
Barging into workplaces.
But for tens of thousands of Mainers, Maine Public Radio is part of their day.
The funding crisis of the past year, even just the whole political nature of things, has raised awareness of who we are and how much people appreciate our news coverage.
Rick Schneider is president and CEO of Maine Public, the statewide organization that provides public radio and public television, both producing public programs and airing others from their national networks, PBS and NPR. The crisis, of course, last year's vote in Congress to take away all the $1 billion of federal funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
It was a painful evening, and I think our friends of public broadcasting in Congress thought they had it won that night. And frankly, I do believe I think it's pretty accepted that the president and the administration twisted some arms to make sure it went through.
For public stations, the cut is to their current budget. For Maine Public, it's 12%, $2.5 million of the total $19 million budget.
PBS is public television, NPR is public radio, CPB has been the funding mechanism. Congress gives CPB an appropriation. CPB took that money and distributed it to local stations.
A tribute to his farewell tour visits.
He says Maine Public's annual budget had been 12% federal and 9% from the state of Maine, essentially to pay the cost of running the transmitter system. All the rest of the money comes from corporate underwriting, foundation grants, and donations from their members.
Everybody is still operating. PBS and NPR at a national level, and local stations are still operating.
But he says they're all now figuring out how to make it work.
PBS and NPR, their biggest source of, at their core, PBS and NPR are member organizations, and all the stations are members. So we pay dues. It's like being part of a club. We pay member dues to PBS and NPR, and in return we get their programming. And stations pay those member dues with the money they raise locally.
And so far, Rick Schneider says their local members have answered the call. What have you heard from your donors as a result of these cuts?
You know, one thing I think that this whole situation, this whole crisis has made me aware of is it's really focused attention on people realizing, oh, this could really happen. What would my life be like without PBS or NPR or Maine Public?
And thanks to all those donations, the programming has gone on relatively unchanged.
We have not had to make any cuts that affect what you see on the air or what you hear on the air. And we have not eliminated, we haven't let anybody go. We haven't done any layoffs.
He says they have had to cut some other expenses and not fill some vacant positions.
This whole area wing here is all the news team.
And at the same time, Maine Public is moving ahead with building a new center in Portland. The project and the capital campaign to pay for it began long before the federal funding cuts to replace their cramped rented space they've used in Portland for years.
HR, finance here.
So they bought the old Portland Public Market and are transforming it into a headquarters for radio, digital, fundraising, and management.
Video edit bays, booths and such.
Marketing Director Corey Morrissey showed us around. To do all this, they're raising $31 million.
We have a $31 million capital campaign goal, of which we have now just recently passed $29 million. So we're more than 90% towards our capital campaign goal.
Schneider says that money has all come from donations, no state or other government funding.
We're here for the state, we're here for everybody, not just Portlanders.
The network's primary television studio will remain in Bangor. The future of their Lewiston TV facility and offices is being reviewed. Meanwhile, the daily work and the daily fundraising go on.
It has become less of an immediate fiscal crisis than more of a midterm to long-term sustainability question.
That will depend on keeping their strong relationship with donors and business supporters who have so far stayed very loyal. And Rick Schneider says one of the programs that will continue is the very popular annual coverage of Maine high school basketball tournaments. This will be the 48th year, they say, that the public broadcasting has covered those tournaments on television.
Yeah.
There was a lot more in that interview, Sam, that we talked about, including questions about the issue of bias and reporting and many other things. We've put most of that interview on our live stream, News Center Maine Plus, where folks can listen to that.
Wonderful. Gives you something to think about. Thanks, Don.